Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Andrew Dudley. I'm the area sales manager for Trotec Laser here in Ireland, live from our Dublin showroom. And Jamie's in our Southwest showroom.
I am. My name is Jay Wakefield. I'm coming live from our Yate Bristol showroom today.
Perfect. Yes, and as I say, thank you very much for joining us. And if you are joining us, please put in chat where you're from in the world, and we'll give you a little shout out. And if there's any questions or comments you have during this webinar, then please feel free to add them, and we'll either pick them up as we go along, or we'll come to them at the end. So today's webinar is how to increase profitability with a dual source laser system. So what we mean by dual source laser system is obviously having two lasers in one machine. Now, there are a few different types of dual source systems that Trotec can offer you. Some of them are, with two different types of CO2 laser source. But what we're going to do today is focus really on the flexx laser systems with the CO2 and the fiber. So if I just share my screen in a second. And no, not that one, that one. Okay, so the first thing we would sort of suggest is that our website is obviously a very good source of information on these different types of technology. And this is our landing page for the flexx technology. So this is using a CO2 laser tube, ceramic CO2 laser tube, and a solid state fiber. So what does this really mean? So we're not going to go into a huge amount of technical detail with these, but effectively what you get is with a CO2 laser, you can process lots of non-metallic materials. So as you see there, we've got wood, we've got glass, paper, stone, those sorts of things. And this would be either engraving or cutting, both or one or the other. And then you can see there that the fiber lasers, not really suitable for that. It won't do anything to wood realistically, certainly not at our power levels. Scroll down to the bottom, and then it's sort of like the reverse. It's flipped with regards to metal, whereas the fiber laser is at the right wavelength, effectively, to work with metal directly, whereas the CO2 laser isn't. You can work with coated metal, so like anodized aluminium, for example. But we're reacting with the coating surface, not the actual metal itself. You might. I forgot this screen there. So you might have experience if you are a CO2 laser. I'll just my screen with things like this, which is an additive that you can put onto the to bare metal, so stainless steel, for example, brass, and laser engrave it with a CO2 laser, and then you wash it off afterwards. Again, this is not acting directly with the metal though, like a fiber laser would. So mainly it's application based or materials based. So if you want to process certain materials, one laser would suit, or another laser would suit. Where you get into the realm of which laser might be suitable is when you look at plastics. So for example, with the plastics here, so acrylic, polycarbonate, we've got down as both lasers are suitable. This basically means that you might find that a CO2 laser is better for cutting, or can cut, but then if you're engraving, a fiber laser might give you a better result, or the other way around. It just depends on what the material is. So again, it's one of these things where hopefully today we're going to show you the differences that you might get in certain plastics and certain materials with a fiber laser and a CO2 laser. So rather than just looking at a website, we've also got a little video. So I'll just bring that up now as well. Started from the beginning. So this is engraving of a mirror. Okay, so this is using a CO2 laser at the start. So this is the back of the mirror. So imagine we're trying to remove that surface of the mirror from the back, and then we're going to go through and create this like frosting of the glass. As you can see, there's a fairly big, it jumped a bit there. It's got a fairly big sort of flash there, because I'm using 100% power in this 80-watt CO2 tube and 15% speed. We could probably go a bit faster if we wanted to, but what you need to do is make sure that you're going through that material, because it might not be uniform thickness. So we're just making sure we're going through, and we're having a frosting underneath anyway. So Jamie, do you want to talk a bit more about the other things that CO2 lasers would be used for?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we've run through the mirror here, quite a standard kind of CO2 application. Your normals, like Andy mentioned there in the materials list, your woods, your papers, your cards. But really today we really want to focus on the fiber side of things. We get a lot of interest in CO2, and we've done a lot of marketing media already throughout the CO2 process. So please visit our YouTube channels, have a look through a lot of the old webinars. You'll see a lot there through various CO2 applications. And also on fiber as well. We spoke a lot about CO2 and fiber and what fiber can add, predominantly for metal marking. Today we really want to focus on some of the niche markets really of fiber, and bringing those two sources together to really bring profitability to your business. So as this runs through, we will then see the Andy will talk through the fiber side of things on the mirror. But like Andy was saying, the frosting on this mirror, because we're actually marking the glass that's underneath this metal. So we're using the CO2 at the moment to remove the metal content at the back of the mirror to give you a marking on the frosting on the glass.
Yeah, and that might be desirable certainly a lot of the time for a backlit. So you might use some LEDs, things like that, to backlight it, and it gives a nice diffused lighting from the frosted glass. So there you see it stopped, raised the bed up, and now what effectively what it did is it just turned the mirror over and just like told the laser to use the fiber laser source. So again, this is using the same lens. So this is a flexx lens. So this will work with both laser sources. You don't need to change the lens. With regards to the focal point, generally, if you're working on the same sort of height of material, you don't need to change the focus. The machine will automatically knows the offset between the two focal points. But on this glass, for example, or this mirror, I focused it on the top of the glass. So when I did the CO2 on the back, I was focusing it on the top layer to remove that metal layer. Whereas now that metal layer has sunk down by about 2 millimeters below the glass. So the fiber laser directly goes, basically doesn't do anything to the glass. It goes straight through the glass and reacts with the metal underneath. So we need to tell the machine to offset it. But again, that's all done in the software. So we don't need to sort of change the machine, change any of the settings on the machine. Just in the settings on the software that changes. And you can see you're getting a nice big flash with the fiber laser. And again, I used the same power and speed just because I thought it was giving a good result in this mirror. Again, it might change depending on what mirror you're using. And I think the only difference was I've used 600 DPI on this setting instead of 500 DPI, just because I think it cleared out the metal layer a little bit better. I think Jamie, you were saying earlier that the fiber laser a slightly tighter tolerance on the focus as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So fiber is really focus critical. So as we run through various something like this, application is perfect for us to highlight that because we're actually going through the glass to remove that metal. That focus needs to be set at the right height to be able to remove the metal at the optimum point. So if you're doing other things like fiber applications, things like, for example, a polished chrome, stainless steel cutlery, where you might have just a slight curvature on it, you're really limited to the curvature at that point. CO2 focal tolerances tend to be slightly bigger, allowing us to do a little bit more. So fiber is really, really critical on that focal point.
Yeah. So I think this video is coming to an end. So I've got the actual sample here. So I'll just stop that. There we go. So this is the one I made earlier. So you see in the reflection there, you can see my camera. Excellent. So the top part up here is the CO2, and then the bottom is the fiber laser. So you should be able to see, not too much behind. You can see a little bit. Sorry, it's more the wall behind. If I can show you, we're looking at perhaps these bits over here. You can't really see that through the fiber laser, the CO2 laser, but you can through the fiber laser. You can see this detail now in the background. And usually, if I put my hand at the back, you can kind of see the ring on my finger there on the T. And if I bring it back, it'll go out of focus really quickly with the CO2. But then if I put it on the T on the fiber laser, you can see the ring, and you can see it a lot further.
Yeah,
away.
real nice clear finish, and real advantages for that going into if we go through.
Yeah.
Real advantages going through there would be things like if you're going to get paint fill. So if you're looking to add more value to it, paint filling. Also with the CO2 laser, you've got that frosting on the glass. So when you paint fill, you're going to have that frosting in front of the paint when you're looking through it. Whereas with the fiber laser, it clears all of that out nice and clearly, crisply, and nice bit of paint filling on the back. Really highlights the quality. And someone just doing a standard frosted CO2 engrave, being able to add that color really just adds a bit more value to everything. It's a real beauty to have both laser sources.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so you can kind of see there, I think the idea we're getting at is you can add more to what you're offering. So, you know, if you had just a CO2 laser, you can, you know, just do the frosting side. And if you had just a fiber laser, you can just do the fiber side. But if you had both of them, you can, you know, be a lot more creative, do a lot of different things with the machine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We've got a few other examples of that. So I suppose on personalization. So just an example on the, excuse me, I'll make myself a little bit bigger again. So this is a black cast acrylic. Again, this is one of the plastics, and this you might think it was just done in one laser, but the engraving of the photograph is done with a fiber laser, and then the text engraving and the cutout is done with the CO2 laser. So what you tend to get with the fiber laser, and Jamie will kind of show this a little bit more with a live demo a bit later, but you get more of a color change. So generally it's a little bit rough, but it's generally a surface engraving. So we're just changing the color of the plastic. Whereas with the CO2, we're kind of removing some of the plastic as well. Again, we can be fairly tight with our tolerances with regards to, you know, how much material we're taking away to make it pretty smooth anyway. But again, with the CO2 laser, you're generally removing material. So you can get, you know, lots of different effects. And, you know, this is cast acrylic where, you know, they look relatively similar, but as you'll see later with Jamie's sample, that's going to look quite different on the ABS, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a couple of others. Obviously, we went with metal marking, so a couple of samples grabbed as well, just to kind of show you the CO2 side of things. So obviously, as Andy was saying earlier, we use the Cermark pasting. We're going to get one finish on stainless steel. That's all you're going to get. Nice black contrast mark. That's all you're kind of limited to with the CO2 lasers. But then we're using the fiber laser. You can just about see this. Nice logo from the England cricket board. So we've used various powers and speed settings to give various finishes. So again, just adding more options and different finishes. No one likes a standard finish. So it's just again adding that value to every product that you're putting out there.
Yeah, gives you more options basically.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're probably about the time where we're going to have a little look at the live demo.
Yeah.
I'll say if there's any questions you have during the webinar, just leave them in the chat and we'll get onto them as soon as we see them.
Fantastic. Yeah. So if I just jump across now and I'll share my screen here. So we're going to run with our Ruby software today, and let me just move this out of the way. Sorry. So I've got our design. We're just going to put a little simple serial number onto a component part that I've picked out. So we've got live feedback from the laser system, which is a little red dot pointer in the laser, corresponds to this little crosshair on screen. So we can snap our job into a position. In fact, I'm in the wrong side. I need to be on the other side for this one. And then we're going to select plastic marking with CO2 to start with. So I'm now just going to push this across to the laser itself. So that one's ready to go. And what I'll do is now just bring back my camera. Thank you. And sorry, apologies. I've just lost my camera start. Let me just change over the camera so I can actually see what's going on in the machine itself. So here we are. We're focused into our part. Like I said, I've got a little component part here that actually is part of a vehicle. So just a little part marking here, just for identification. So the laser itself, as Andy was saying earlier, we just have our standard flex lens, which is here, gold area at the top, which will allow us to run with CO2 and fiber. So we just need to focus onto the material itself. Now I've used a manual focus here today, which we have the little tool that just sits on the side of the head, which I'm sure you've seen many a time on our webinars. And I'm just going to bring that material up till it touches our tool. And then from there, I'm just going to press play on our Ruby software. and then we're going to see the plastic being marked first off, like I say, with CO2. And things like ABS here, this plastic really highlights the engraving differences between the two. So as it runs through, what we find is with CO2, it produces a mark that is legible. You get a slightly sort of melted, rounded edge, and then with fiber laser, we're basically color changing that product. So if I lift this up first, you can kind of see if I get it in focus, no real color change. It's gone back to the same color as the plastic itself. And then what I'll do is just move this across now, reposition. So I want to be into this corner. And again, if I just share my screen again here, our job is finished, so our queue is empty. So we're going back into our design area. I'm going to move my job over now. So I'm on this position. And we just need to change it over material. So I started with plastic with CO2. And then what I've done is created a different setting for plastic with fiber marked. So it's just a slightly different setting, nice and simple. And then I'm going to push that over to the laser again and press play. So if I again change the screen, there we go, back onto the laser itself, and straight away you can see the reaction.
Yeah, that's a
much bigger spark,
reaction, isn't it? Yeah.
And then slowly as it comes in, not easy to see here, but I'll now lift it up and show you the finish. And you've got a real nice contrasting mark with a color change. So yeah, it's not easy to see on screen, but it's the sort of CO2 level, you get real sort of melted edges. So you're limited when it comes into real high detail or real fine text. But simple sort of part marking here, you see it with the fiber laser, really makes a big difference, a real standout.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, so that shows a real, real contrast in the two different results you can get with the different laser sources. Again, you might find that the CO2 laser would be, appropriate for cutting that material, but maybe marking, you're going to find the fiber laser is going to be a much, much nicer mark, much more, sort of nice looking. You also get the benefit with the fiber laser of it's not really removing material, is it, Jamie? It's just sort of a surface change. So if you've got any, you haven't got any issues with, the part not being smooth now, or dirt getting into that area, with regards to cleaning or sterilization, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah, it makes a big difference for things like the medical trade who are marking up for needing to ID parts now, and traceability and things like that is a big part of the world nowadays, and it makes a big difference being able to just surface mark it. So we're actually not creating a groove or anything with the fiber laser, so it keeps it nice and sterile, like Manley was saying there.
Yeah. So we've gone through a few sort of practical differences between the two lasers, what they can and can't do. What we're going to have a little look now. Oh, sorry, wrong screen. We've got multiple ones of everybody there. Went on for infinity. So I suppose the crux of this is why would you have two? Obviously, we've gone sort of highlighted. You can use the lasers for different materials, and that's really one of the main sort of draws for having two lasers in one, is you can do more. So you can work with your different materials, your plastics, your woods, and your metals in one laser without having to do anything else, any other processes. So it makes a massive difference in terms of what you can offer your customers, and especially your existing customers, because if you've got customers that are buying normal labeling from you, or even if it's the other way around, they're buying steel from you, stainless steel tags from you, you can offer the other services as well. And as we know, any customer that's happy with what you're providing is likely to change to you for other work as well, if you can provide it. Also, with the two lasers, one machine, another thing. So these sort of 6 points, I think myself and Jamie sat down and thought about what our customers over the last 6 to 12 months have kind of bought a flexx machine for with dual source lasers, and these are kind of like the 6 main points that we could think that our customers sort of told us were the main sort of requirements. And doing what others cannot, is a main thing. Again, it's sort of linked in with the do more, but lots of people have got CO2 lasers these days. They're fairly common in the marketplace. Fiber lasers a bit less so, and certainly the dual source machines even less so than that. So being able to produce work where it's got both types of laser source, nobody else, unless they've got the same laser, can do that. You can't recreate that results. So that was something that a number of people were very, very interested in doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the world as it has been for the last 12 to 18 months, companies have looked to expand portfolios, look to go to other avenues and other streams. I think this is just highlighting the fact of what's potentially there, and what you can do with one machine, having the flexx with 2 laser sources. And another point there, as we go through the higher value jobs, so Andy highlighted there with the mirror engraving earlier, being able to do that nice clear crisp engraving with a fiber laser to be able to paint fillet just adds a little bit extra to that mirror, rather than just having a one-off frosted finish, or having the edge lighting or backlighting, getting a clearer, crisper finish just adds a bit more quality to it. And it's the same with lots of other products. Like we've got the picture there with the knife, for example, being able to engrave on both the knife blade and the wood itself. You can do that in one job. Just put it in, you're jigging it up in the laser, you're running it with the fiber laser onto the steel blade, and then running it with the CO2 on the wood. Really just adds something slightly different to somebody else who's just got maybe a mechanical machine or has just got a CO2 machine. They're limited to how far they can go. So just being able to add that extra value, and then obviously adding value to it always means more money in your back pocket. Going through here, rolling into that is reducing the outsourcing costs. So if you have only got that one machine and you're running through and you're outsourcing to somebody else who has got a fiber laser or has got a CO2 machine, obviously you're paying them to do it. A lot of the profit in that is going into them. So you're only making very small margins to try and be competitive on price. So bringing it in-house, having that one machine reduces your outsourcing costs, brings all the money back into yourself. And obviously the big one really, I suppose, again, is space requirements. We all have our own space that we work within, our own units. Some guys are in their back gardens, in their garages, others in big areas and workspaces. Space is always a requirement, and having 2 lasers, you can have one with CO2, you can have one with fiber. By having that one machine together, just reduces that footprint. And it's not just the machine, obviously the machine takes up a lot of it. It's just remembering the little bits that add to that. So the things like your extraction that needs to go onto both machines as well. It takes up a lot of floor space. So it's always worth just having a look at it and looking at your processes. And that's why myself and Andy are here to try and help you make those decisions. So if you've ever got any questions regards the processing, and the best way to go about processing and having the 2 machines in one, that's what we're here for. So come and talk to us.
Yeah, exactly. And specifically, I suppose that space in retail as well, because obviously space is a premium there, and
absolutely,
certainly adding the 2 lasers in one in the retail environment makes a lot of sense. Okay, so hopefully that's a bit of a, I suppose, an eye opener in terms of why people might consider the two laser sources in one machine. What we've got next is we've got a example return on investment. So this is something that's as live to a customer's job as we had in the last couple of months. We've changed a few details, obviously, but hopefully it'll give you an idea in terms of sort of return on investments and maybe challenges that people have currently. I think Jamie's going to do a little sample of this one as well while we watch it. It's not just death by PowerPoint.
Yes, I will indeed.
Yes, but so this example return on investment. So this customer of ours had a customer themselves who'd already been using them for a number of months, and they were ordering this stainless steel label. So this was about 50 mil by 50 mil size, 2 lines of text as you see there, and the order volume was 600 a month, roughly 600 a month, and it was fairly consistent, and it was going to carry on. So what they were doing currently is they were currently outsourcing it, and that outsourcing cost was £4.20. They were using somebody in a different city, a couple hundred miles away, because they didn't want to, give it to somebody locally because they might know who it is. And they were selling that for £7 per item on that volume. So, they were making a little bit of money, but they thought, they were having a few issues with the, lead times. So things were getting a bit delayed in terms of how long deliveries were going to take. They were having issues with quality. So, if there's a mistake, then it took a while for them to rectify that and send another one. Another item, things like that. So they were having issues really with their suppliers. Again, it's common outsourcing issues that you might expect. Sometimes they're apparent, sometimes they're not, but they were finding that was the issue. See, Jamie's hitting some metal there with a fiber laser.
Yeah, hopefully not sparking too many epileptic fits here. quite flashy here. Exactly. I apologise.
Exactly. So that's already finished. So actually, let's have a quick look at that.
So a nice simple tag. Again, using a polished stainless steel. Nice quick marking to give you a good fibre finish. That one.
Yeah. So there's, again, on stainless steel, there's a couple of different finishes you can achieve, like Jamie showed you earlier with the ECB logo. So yeah, there's a few different finishes you can achieve. So really, it came down to cost and money, and whether this dual source laser system they could see the return on investment. And at the end of the day, it's always a business decision. So that's what we're looking at. So we worked out that the average cost of that 50 by 50 bit of steel was 30 pence. Again, this does change a bit, but on average over a couple of months, that was the cost of one item. And so they were saving about £3.90 per plate from outsourcing. Again, this is, sort of a good idea of how much you might be able to save on outsourcing costs. So in that one job of 600 plates, they were saving effectively per month £2,340. So that's effectively what they were making extra by bringing this process in-house. That's just on the material side. That wasn't including any labour costs, but again, they were having to do quality. They're finding they're having to do quality control anyway with the labour, so they didn't find it being too much of a difference in terms of what their actual sort of end figure came out as. And as the laser was pretty quick, it does the 600 plates in 4 hours 22 minutes. I think it was about 4 or 5 different plates, beds full of the plate to do the job. And again, once you set it up, you press go, and you can be working on a different, the next job, or loading and unloading, packing, that kind of thing. So it's really, you can be fairly efficient with what you're doing. But then, at the bottom there, that's the key figure. That's the key figure. It's £530 an hour. So you're engraving for 4.5 hours. You're making £530 in that hour. Again, if you take off labour, that's £500 an hour. That's, anybody would be happy with that in terms of return on investment. In terms of what they're doing, and that's only half a day's work, so per month. So if you're looking at adding 2 or 3 customers doing this, then you're well on your way to making some money in your business. Then it's I suppose how much does the fiber laser cost? So again, it depends on what fiber laser you're going for and what model. They all vary a little bit, but on this basis, they were looking at a 20-watt fiber. And with that, that saving per month, they were looking at return on investment just by that one job they were getting from that one customer in about 8.5 months. So well under a year in terms of return on investment. Again, well within scope of making it a good decision. And again, that's only using it for half a day or a month. It's they were going to use it for a lot more than that. So it just makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. I mean, who's going to sit there and leave a machine running for half a day a month? We're all going to try and utilize it as much as possible. This is obviously, like I said, very simple return on investment for us, just to kind of highlight the fact of adding that extra source into it. That's just one job, and hopefully we've covered quite a lot today with various other jobs that you can use it for. But like we always say, as I said earlier, come and speak to us. I'm more than happy to try and help you out on things like returns on investments. We can work out also material costs and things like that. So come and speak to us. Come and have a look at it. Run us in the showrooms. Come and see us. I think it's the biggest thing that we can keep saying.
Yeah, exactly. It's a case of if you want to see what they can do, and you've got even if it's a specific application that you want to have a test on that you've got on today, Jamie.
Indeed, yeah.
It's the same thing. It's a case of that we know we can do work with it. It's just obviously seeing it for yourself and seeing what the process is and the whole workflow, and what's behind it as well is the backup and support you get as well, and the
Absolutely.
the product management and problem solving. So we had a couple of questions came back to us on an email, but before the webinar, so we'll go through those. So the first one was, can the flexx machine cut metal? So the easy answer is no. The short answer is no. The long answer is maybe. Basically, we don't advertise it as being or the fiber lasers that we do in our speedy range as cutting metal, because they can't cut 5 mil, 10 mil thick steel. People would expect it to cut a reasonable thickness. They can, on the other hand, cut thin films, meshes, that kind of thing, and it might be, one or two or multiple passes. So there are some applications where we can use it for cutting at these levels, but realistically, it's a case of we'd have to test those each time.
Yeah, absolutely. We very, very much take it application by application, don't we? We don't advertise it as cutting metal, because the general consensus of metal cutting will be to cut, like Andy said, thicker materials of steel, and it's not something we're set up to do. We're at very low power, and in that sense, running at 20 watt, 30 watt, or 50 watt, we're not going to get the powers to cut through steel at high numbers. So it's very much, if you've got the application, you've been asked for something, come and speak to us. Give us a go. If you can get a bit of a sample of the material, we're more than happy to trial it with you.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing we do. We'll create application reports and things like that so people can, be rest assured that this application is suitable or not suitable, as the case may be.
Absolutely.
So maybe Jamie, you can answer this. I think you answered it a little bit earlier, but do you require any different lenses or tables?
Again, simple answer is no. We have the flexx lens, which allow us to run through CO2 and fiber. Different tables, again, not really. We're running, depending on machines, honeycomb tables, or running with slightly larger machines on the Speedy 400s and things like that with black aluminium grid tables. They work for both. So predominantly we're using the fiber laser as a marking system. So we can use the engraving table or vacuum table. Like I've done today, I've been using the solid engraving table on our Speedy 300 Flex. So realistically, no, you don't require anything. However, we do find certain applications, we use different lenses, may use different tables. So as I mentioned, vacuum tables there for much thinner materials, or laminates to really hold the material nice and flat, so we get a very good finish on it. Lenses, again, we do a scope of lenses, some smaller end at 1.5 inch lens to do real high detailed engraving, whereas it's not so good for cutting. So we then do a range of lenses then to go through with cutting applications, 2.5 inch lens, the flexx lens at 2.85, and a 4 inch lens on the CO2 to give us a wider scope for the more quality and detailed level that we need to get to. Generally, we supply obviously the flexx lens for a flexx machine, which will do all your general stuff to an agreeable standard. But then you've got the ones you want to go into real high detail or a high quality cutting, then maybe we could have a look at different lenses for you.
Yeah, exactly. I think in my experience of the customers, a flexx lens would probably cover 95% of what most people would want to do with it.
Absolutely.
It's just when maybe you've got another specific application that's a CO2 only lens would, like Jamie said, a 2.5 inch, a 1.5 inch CO2 lens might do a certain job a little bit better. But realistically, 95% of stuff is with the flexx lens.
Yep.
And then I think there's two more. So can I upgrade my existing CO2 to a flexx? You certainly can. This is something we offer. Now, obviously, it depends on how old your CO2 system is, because if it was built in the 90s, then maybe not. But certainly, if it was one of the models where we've introduced the flexx system on, then yes. We certainly can speak for the UK and Ireland, where if you didn't, we can offer trade-ins. So very often people will look at this and they might trade in their CO2 for a flexx, or they might just go for a second machine as well.
Absolutely, and it's probably worth highlighting here that our flexx machines are only available on our Speedy series. So yes, CO2 machines we do a wider range, but the flexx upgrades very much on the Speedy series, so from Speedy 100 through to Speedy 400.
Yeah, exactly. So again, just it is available, but obviously depending on what model you've got. And then I think the last question we have is, how do I find the right focus when processing multiple materials in the same job with different heights? So I think this goes back to the, Jamie, if you want to go back to the knives, I think.
Yes, so different heights. So the knives one's a great example to highlight this. So obviously the stainless steel or steel knives there. So you've got the blade itself. So what we do is focus on the blade, and then we work out the height difference from the blade to the handle. So for this example, if we said it's 3 mil, it's just software controlled. So we go into our material database, we'd have the color, black color, for example, for fiber engraving. And then on the red, we then have a red color for the CO2 engraving. And we'd select basically an offset in our materials database of +3. So we'd engrave the fiber, it would then drop the bed down by 3 mil so that we can engrave the higher part of the handle with the CO2. However, if you're running through things like the Jimi Hendrix picture we did earlier, which is just on a flat sheet of acrylic, we'd focus on the surface of the acrylic, and the fiber laser would engrave in focus as we are. And then with the CO2, it's a preset determined with the machine to drop. It's roughly about 5-6 mil to be in focus for the CO2. So that's all pre-programmed. You don't need to edit that at all.
Yeah, it's all the same height. So you just so the offset on the different focal lengths of the two lasers is already in the system, so you don't need to worry about that.
Absolutely. It's only if your product height is changing that we need to set offsets to. So if you're running on sheet material, it's all preset for us.
Exactly. So I think that's all the questions from everybody, unless I've missed one. No, I think that's everything. So
yep.
Just like to say thank you very much for joining us today, and I think this will be available on our YouTube channel afterwards. Anyway, so you can pick it up there. I'm sure it'll be on in no time. James is in the background there looking maybe. It wasn't good enough today, lads.
It'll be on our YouTube, yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, guys, just to follow us on social medias. We're all on.
Yeah. So we've got our usual social media channels. So follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or all that. I think Instagram and YouTube are usually the best ones. But again, you can see us on all of them. And if you've got a genuine interest or inquiry and want to see them at one of our showrooms or via a Teams or Zoom meeting, we can do that as well. So we can facilitate both in person and remote demonstrations, or just to answer your inquiries. Again, details there. There's our phone number and email address, and all of that is available on the website. So I think that's it, Jamie. I think we've done our time, and thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And have a great rest of your day.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.